Okay, so we can start. This time it's not me who's gonna do the introduction, so it's gonna do Alfie. Alfie is our coach as well. He was present at our previous sessions, so he and Ian works together. So I think he's gonna do that better than me. So Alfie, I pass the microphone to you.
And Alfie is also my amazing husband.
Ariane is also my amazing wife.
This is Ariane. Thanks for the big heart. So I thought you could see my son, my husband, and my husband was the one that suggested we get Ian to speak to all of you. So I thought it would be a lovely opportunity for him to just share a little bit about Ian before he gets started.
Yes, so hi everyone. It's good to see you all. I recognize some of you from the previous session that I ran, and hello to those of you who I haven't met yet. So I was thrilled when Ariane and Zina asked me to introduce Ian. He's a dear friend who I got to know at Red Bull when Ian was leading the foundation and establishment of Red Bull's global social entrepreneurship program called Amaphiko. Since then, Ian has founded Further, which is his organization that has the goal to strengthen entrepreneurs and communities. And Ian is a serial entrepreneur. He has done so many amazing things in the world. And Ian has such a tremendous perspective on entrepreneurs and what drives them, human development, human performance, and establishing businesses. He is the only person on this program who is speaking twice. So that should tell you everything that you need to know. You're all really very lucky to be hearing from him, and we're incredibly grateful, Ian, that you're joining us. I really encourage you to take notes. His insights are invaluable. I'm looking forward to hearing from him as well. And just to echo Alexandra's point, please do turn on your videos. As a speaker, it's great to see everyone. It's great to see your faces. You know, obviously we wish we could all be sitting in the same room. We're fortunate to be able to do this over Zoom. And it's great to have that interaction from you. It really doesn't matter if you're drinking a beer or walking down, you know, the road. As you can see, we're here as a family. It's very relaxed, but it's good to, as a speaker, to be able to see you, and for your colleagues to also be able to see you. So with that, thank you, Ian, for being here, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Alfie, and thanks for those kind words. And to you and Ariane for involving me in this. And I have to say up front, you know, the topic that I'm going to be speaking to, which is about human performance and about achieving far more than you think you're capable of, and overcoming obstacles, I feel quite inadequate given the challenges that all of you on this call have had to overcome and had to persevere and endure. So I'm seeing this really as a conversation that we both, I think all of us hopefully have a passion for, to see how far we as human beings can really push ourselves, not just to create valuable businesses, but for the betterment of humanity. And sometimes it's in the crucible of crisis and conflict and war, and in our South African context, the legacy of so much of the history that has led to people operating in incredibly difficult circumstances. And it's all about seeing that as, in a way, a gift, that when we really perform at our peak, it's often when we are pushed to the very edge of our comfort zone. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the talk. There's a few videos, a few slides. There's going to be a little bit of audience participation. I'm going to be talking, or we're going to be talking probably for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then there will be lots of time for questions at the end. But please, I am going to be pushing you on a few things that I really want you to engage in. So as Sasha said, if you can keep your cameras on, that would be great. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, because I think it's a very kind of relevant journey. So Alfie described me as a serial entrepreneur. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I have been doing this for about 35 years. And I started my career in the advertising industry. in a big international advertising agency called Ogilvy, which I think they probably have a branch in Kyiv somewhere. And the good thing about advertising, there's a lot of bad things about advertising, but there's a lot of good things about advertising. And one is you get exposed to lots of different business sectors, lots of different industries, lots of different brands. So you get a good understanding for different business models. You get a great understanding of human beings and insight and really what are the fundamental drivers of human behavior. And anyway, so I worked for Ogilvy for a long time. I'm originally from the UK. I grew up in the north of England in a small coal mining town, and then continued to head south until I got to Cape Town. I moved over to South Africa in 1990, just as all the transition from apartheid to democracy was happening, and Nelson Mandela was released, and it was just a really exciting time to be in the country. And so I worked for Ogilvy here. I became the youngest ever board director of Ogilvy in my kind of early 20s. And it was just an amazing country, and to see people operate with such resilience, such dignity in incredibly difficult circumstances, I think was the start of this journey that I've been on. Like most people do in big ad agencies, I then thought I can do this better myself. So I left and started my entrepreneurial journey in 1996 and started my own ad agency with a couple of partners. So that was my first taste of running my own business. And I guess we took off very rapidly. We won awards at the Cannes Advertising Festival. We thought we were rock stars. And then you realize that ultimately business relationships are difficult ones. Partnerships are really difficult things. And particularly myself and my one partner had, he wasn't interested in a partnership. He wanted it to be his business. So we parted company. I sold my shares and then started a really interesting business, which took me nearer to what I'm doing now. It was initially a youth trend spotting business, where in South Africa, like in so many emerging countries, the youth population is massive. And in South Africa, 65% of the population is under the age of 30. And of that population, 75% of them are Black. So they're African youth. And for brands and marketers and businesses to understand what drives them, the usual methods of research just weren't adequate. And things were changing so quickly in those days that you had to understand what was happening in youth culture in real time. So we recruited this network of cool, young, kind of what people would call influencers today, but they were really just kind of urban spies. And we started the business in the early 2000s in South Africa. There was a real demand for what we did in the rest of Africa. So we were working with the usual kind of youth brands like Nike, Adidas, and Red Bull, which I'll come on to. Levi Strauss. We were really the cool hunters. We were looking for cool stuff that brands needed to know about. And that journey also took us to the Middle East, and it also took us to Russia, if I'm allowed to use that word. And so I spent quite a long time in Moscow because the youth in Russia in the early 2000s were also coming out of their own period of being kept out of the world economy. And so we were really plugged into some amazing youth cultures in Moscow. But I don't think, around 2011, when the financial crisis happened, we pulled out of Moscow, and I don't think we'll really ever be going back. But during that journey with Red Bull, as one of our clients, they were often saying to us, well, look, in the rest of the world, Red Bull is all around extreme sports. It's about Red Bull gives you wings. It's about being pushed to the limit of your abilities. And what does that mean in South Africa, particularly? And we'd been telling them for quite a few years that for your average young South African, your average young Black South African, your extreme sport is daily survival. It's economic survival. And in many ways, entrepreneurship is an extreme sport, because it challenges you and it pushes you to your limits. And a lot of the world of Red Bull, which, as you know, is around Formula One racing and big wave surfing and snowboarding and as Everest would like to hear, downhill mountain biking. A lot of that just wasn't relevant to young Black South Africans. And we said, look, you have to do something in the world of entrepreneurship. And eventually in 2012, we were contacted by an amazing woman, Raluca Simiuk, who is from Romania. And she worked in the head office of Red Bull in Salzburg in Austria. And she asked us to explore this world of social entrepreneurship. So, and I think you'll all be familiar with what a social entrepreneur is, or an impact entrepreneur, as we now call them. And so it's really an entrepreneur who is trying to solve a problem in a society, and particularly in South Africa, in the poor communities, in the township communities that just don't have running water. They don't have consistent access to sanitation, to electricity, to food. So really you're dealing with a crisis situation. And so through our business, and through this network of young people we had, we went out and found these amazing young people who'd never heard of the term social entrepreneur, but were kind of being it anyway. So they were solving a problem. They were finding a financial way of making it sustainable, and they were making a living from it. And so we helped Red Bull design this program that Alfie mentioned called Red Bull Amaphiko. And Amaphiko is a Zulu word. Zulu is the biggest language in South Africa, and it means wings. So you can see why it worked for Red Bull. And the mission was really to give wings to these young, early stage, community-based entrepreneurs. And the belief was that if Red Bull has the know-how to help some of their athletes, some of their big sporting stars who are doing incredible feats of physical kind of achievement, surely there's something we can learn from that to help entrepreneurs do what they do. And so we started this journey of really kind of hacking the world of elite sport for the benefit of entrepreneurs. And that's what we're going to be talking about a lot about today. And one of the most influential people that I met on this journey, and somebody that both Ariane and Alfie have met, was the head of high performance for Red Bull, an Australian doctor of high performance called Andy Walsh, who he has a long list of scientific and letters after his name, but he drinks beer better than anybody else I know. And I got to work with him, and he's now become a very close and dear friend of mine, to really say, what are the kind of things that you've learned in helping these athletes perform that are relevant to entrepreneurs? And just to give you an idea of the kind of out there shit that he used to do, I'm going to play you a short video of a project that he was very instrumental in doing, which was one of Red Bull's most famous campaigns to try and find, what are human beings capable of? So just bear with me whilst I share this.
We got to get Felix off the ground safely and not tear the balloon. And we need optimum conditions. So as the weather person here, we're going to be very, very, very picky in picking the right conditions.
Felix has completed his physical.
I've been working 4 years on the program. I believe in what Felix is trying to do, to test the next generation full pressure suit. And I'm just delighted to be a member of the team.
This is mission control at this time. Felix is departing his Airstream trailer to be strapped into the Stratos capsule.
I will assess the situation again. We will not start inflating as soon as the balloon's completed laying out. So there'll be another small hold.
T-minus 1 hour, 13 minutes. We're going to go on hold.
Chuck Yeager was the first man to go supersonic in an aircraft. It was 65 years ago, and I think it would be just absolutely wonderful if we could get Felix to go supersonic without an airplane on the same day that Chuck Yeager flew supersonic in an airplane.
At this time, we have begun balloon inflation. Capsule systems are green, instrumentation's green, payload's green, medical systems are green.
There's the release, and there's the applause, a successful rise.
This is Mission Control. Felix's current altitude is 25,300 feet.
We're at 108,000 feet. There is an issue with the heat in the faceplate. Mission for the time being is continuing as the team considers what are the options. So the decision has been made. Baumgartner will jump.
Sometimes you have to get up really high. How small you are. I'm going home now.
Jumper away. Speed 650 miles per hour. Speed 725. Speed 729. Felix in a stable descent. Safely, the new world record holder.
When you're standing out there on that step, on top of the world, you know, you become so humble. At that moment, it's not about breaking records anymore.
Okay, so Andy, the guy I was mentioning, his job in that mission was to coach Felix Baumgartner, to get him in the right mental state, the right emotional state, the right physical state to be able to do that. And it took him 3 years, and Baumgartner had 2 mental breakdowns during that thing. And Andy is an amazing coach. He's coached the US Olympic ski team. He's consulted to some of the best soccer coaches around the world about how to get the best out of people. And the day that everything switched on was when he and Felix were having a conversation. He asked him a simple question: how do you want to be remembered? Yeah. How do you want to be remembered? Yeah. And I know Ariane a couple of weeks ago spoke to you about health and well-being, but the importance of purpose and doing things for other people. That question made him think, right, what is his purpose? And his purpose in doing this became to inspire other people in other situations that no matter how impossible you think that situation, you can achieve what you want to achieve. So what, and I'm going to share my screen again now, what Red Bull had, or what Andy developed as a framework, can you all see that? Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, with me sharing my screen, I can't see all of you in the video. So if you've got questions, please just unmute yourself and just dive in and ask. So this is the model that Red Bull use for their high performance athletes. Okay. And you'll see it's a set of cogs. So cogs, if you know that English word, it's like you would have in a clock or a watch mechanism. And if one of those cogs isn't working, then none of the cogs work. So it's looking at a human being as a machine where all of these different things have to work. And when you're dealing with high-performing athletes, you would expect to see things like, physical development, skills development, technology, nutrition, medical, etc. But what you might not expect to see are things like life skills, creativity, spirituality, X factor. But, and I guess, or maybe you do expect to see those, because as most of you would know, the difference between the people who win the gold medals and the people who win the bronze medals has very, very little to do with their physical capabilities, but it's all around their mental state and what they see their mission in life to be, and the purpose that they've set out for themselves. And so we use this as the foundation for developing strong entrepreneurs. And I'm going to jump to this, and I'll explain why this is now no longer has a Red Bull logo on it. But what we did was we adapted these cogs from Andy's high performance for athletes to high performance for entrepreneurs. And the big cogs in the middle, you'll see, are personal development, business development, and storytelling. Now, business development, lots of entrepreneurial support organizations can help you with business plans, with funding strategies, how to approach investors, how to be investment ready, how to scale your technology. But very few of them focus on the personal development and on the entrepreneurial mindset, the sense of purpose, the ability, your personal well-being. And again, I know Ariane ran an amazing session on health a while ago. Because ultimately, as all of you would know, that the journey of an entrepreneur, yes, there are business challenges, there are technical challenges, but most of the challenges that you come across are deeply human challenges, like your tolerance for uncertainty, your degree of comfort with discomfort, the difficulty of maintaining relationships during your journey, the difficulty of maintaining your own mental and physical well-being during the journey, the questioning of yourselves about what can I do? Can I really do this? Am I capable of doing this? What now people label as imposter syndrome, that, I've never done this before. Can I really do this? So these are intensely human challenges. And the journey of an entrepreneur is basically taking the basic human condition and concentrating it. So it's like, if you can get through this, then you can be a pretty strong human being. And let me just stop for a second. And so beyond this journey, and I became so sort of obsessed with this journey about how do we enable these entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs coming from these tough backgrounds. How do we take this forward? And luckily, Red Bull asked, after we developed the program in South Africa, Red Bull asked if I would leave my company and lead this program around the world. So we took it to Brazil, to America, to the UK, to about 15 countries in total, working with hundreds of entrepreneurs through academy programs, working with thousands of entrepreneurs through weekend boot camps. But all of it was focused on the theory that if you build stronger human beings, or you build the stronger human elements of entrepreneurs, then they will build stronger enterprises, which will be sustainable and have impact. And so that was an amazing 5 years of my life. And then in 2019, a lot of the social issues that we were starting to challenge started to become socio-political issues. So issues around refugee communities, issues around diversity, equity, inclusion, which for a brand like Red Bull, which had always steered very well clear of politics, they felt this was getting a little bit too delicate for them. So they sadly decided that they wanted to close this program down. So me being an entrepreneur said to them, okay, there are two ways this can go. You can try and explain to the people of South Africa, because by this stage we'd been running the program for 6 or 7 years in South Africa, and it was a highly respected program in the entrepreneurial community. So you can either explain why you're shutting it down, and good luck with that, or you can let me and the team who created this thing spin it off as an independent business. And that's now what I do. And the business is called Further, because what we want to do is take the mission that we started with Amaphiko further. We want to take our entrepreneurs further. We want to push what are the capabilities of human beings further to do good in the world. So that was a long introduction to my journey, but hopefully you saw some of the principles of high performance coming through here. And a lot of it is all based on the challenge, and we're going to talk a lot about the difference between a threat and a challenge, and managing risk and assessing risk. Yeah, because when Felix Baumgartner jumped out of the airplane, he had to know he was taking a huge risk, but with the right level of assessment and the right mindset that this is actually a challenge, not a threat, he was able to overcome it. So now what we're going to do is a quick exercise. So for those of you who haven't fallen asleep yet, we're going to do an exercise. And when we did this with Red Bull, we used to do this in a swimming pool or in an ocean, okay? Because we're going to see, and I know Ariane spoke a lot about the importance of breath. See, I did watch your video, Ariane. We're going to see how long you can hold your breath. Okay, so what I want you to do is please turn your videos on. And I'm going to count down. I'm going to count 3, 2, 1. I want you to hold your breath. And for as long as you're holding your breath, keep your hand up. Okay. And when you can't hold your breath anymore, just put your hand down. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I've got a stopwatch going, and I'm going to count out every 10 seconds. And so I want you to remember when you can't hold your breath anymore, put your hand down and remember how long you could hold it for. Okay. All right. So, you ready? 3, 2, 1, and hold your breath and lift your hand up. Okay. So hold your breath for as long as you can. So we're at 10 seconds. 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 25 seconds. Okay, Everest's out. 30 seconds, 35 seconds. Okay, a few hands starting to go down now. 40 seconds, 45, 50, 55, 1 minute. Still some guys holding in there strong. 1 minute 5, 1 minute 10, a few going down now. 1 minute 15, 1 minute 20, still a couple holding in, 1 minute 30. Okay, Ivan's still going strong, 1:35, or is he just waving? I don't know. 1 minute 40, 1 minute 45. Okay, Ivan, I'm going to have to ask you because we're going to need to move on here. I think it's not a competition against other people. It's a competition against yourself. So you probably could have held it on a little bit longer there. All right. So most of you, I mean, you had different numbers. So just remember how long you lasted. So now a little bit of scientific knowledge is that the human body can actually last, because what you were all experiencing there was that burning in your chest, and the reptile part of your brain is saying, you're going to die. I'm going to die. I need oxygen. I'm going to die. And therefore your body takes over. Yeah. Your reflexes take over and you force yourself to breathe. Right. The human body can last for 8 minutes without oxygen. And even when it gets to 8 minutes, there's a little organ called your spleen, which is like your super oxygen battery pack, which will squirt super oxygenated blood into the body, which will give you about another minute. So you were all a very, very long way from dying, okay? And what you were feeling, that burning in your chest, is not you dying. It's the fact that since you were born, your lungs have been moving in and out and in and out. It's called muscle memory. So that even when you're asleep, even when you're concentrating on something else, your lungs are going in and out. And as Ariane told you, you should be doing that deeply, not shallowly, but let's not get confused now. And so what you're feeling is just your body protesting. But so it's just muscle pain. But what you start to think of it in your head is because it starts to hurt a lot and because it feels like pain, you see it as a threat. Yeah, and that threat makes you react and make assumptions, and you stop holding your breath because you feel you need to breathe. We're going to do this again, and this time that burning, I want you to close your eyes, concentrate really hard, and don't see it as a pain, yeah, and a threat. Simply see it as a sensation that your mind can tell your lungs to relax, to chill, that actually it's fine, we're not going to die. And all of a sudden that what feels like a pain simply becomes an uncomfortable sensation. And as entrepreneurs, you should be comfortable with discomfort. Okay. So we're going to do this again. Remember how long you lasted last time and see how long you can last this time. And all I would say is when you feel that panic and that stress, I mean, eventually you're going to have to breathe. Okay, let's not kill anyone here. But when you start to feel that panic, just try and control that panic. See it as a sensation. Know that you're not going to die, and see how much longer you last. Okay. Okay, so just sit up straight, a couple of deep breaths, roll your head around. Okay. Are we ready? Hang on. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you're at 10 seconds already. And you'll probably it'll start to feel, you'll be able to feel it fairly soon. But remember, it's just a sensation. You're not in any danger. So that's 25 seconds already. Okay. Okay, 30 seconds. All right. So you're probably starting to feel it getting tense and tense and tense and burning. Keep going. 40 seconds. 45 seconds. 50 seconds. 1 minute. 1 minute 5, 1 minute 10. Again, just control. It's going to start. It's really hurting now, but again, you know that you're not in danger. You're not going to die. 1 minute 23. 1 minute 30. Taras hanging in there, well, and Max. And Ariane, but she knows this. 1 minute 40. By this stage, first time around, we only had Ivan with his hand up. 1 minute 45. Max and Taras hanging in there. And I think Maria, possibly. 152. Okay, so I'm going to call it at 2 minutes. Okay. So you can all breathe now. Please breathe. So in simple terms, if the first time around you lasted 30 seconds, but you managed the second time around to push to 45 seconds, then you're capable of 50% more than you thought you were beforehand. Okay? And the principle of this is, armed with the right information, with the right assessment of a situation, you convert a threat into a challenge, and you can push through what you thought you were capable of. So a simple little exercise that speaks to some of the principles that we work with the entrepreneurs. Okay. One of the, I don't know if any of you know about, or if I say the words, the flow state. Are you familiar with the concept of flow? Yeah. It might, yeah, I'm not sure in your language what it is. It was a concept developed by or articulated by a Hungarian psychologist called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which is a really difficult word to pronounce. And it's a state of being where in certain situations, we lose all awareness of ourselves, we lose awareness of time, we don't have to, everything just flows. We see the world in a very rich pattern, and it's known as flow. And athletes get into it, musicians get into it, particularly jazz musicians. And often they'll talk about, a jazz musician will talk about being in the pocket. Yeah, it's just that moment where, and I play the guitar, I'm a blues guitarist, and I get lost at times. You're playing with your friends and you start jamming and you're playing, and you no longer have to concentrate and your fingers just work. Yeah, or it might be, if you're an artist, you might be painting something, you might be writing something. But can I ask, just with a show of hands, have any of you experienced that state where you just lose all track of time and the world gets really easy? Yeah, quite a few hands going up. Yeah. And can I ask one or two of you, just turn your microphones on and just say, what were you doing at the time? Was it sport, music, art, life? What was it? Yeah.
Sport and meditation as well.
Meditation. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, sport for me. I was swimming that time.
Yeah. And it's addictive, hey? It's addictive. And what makes it addictive is as soon as you are aware that you're in it, you're out of it. Yeah, because it needs that complete loss of self-awareness to really make it beautiful. And it's a very addictive state. It's basically, and the neuroscientists have looked at this. And sorry, I'm just going to share my screen quickly. It's the equivalent of a cocktail of cocaine, meth, marijuana. It's basically a cocktail of the best drugs because it's firing your serotonin, your dopamine, your norepinephrine, all the key neurochemicals that stimulate us. That's what it's firing. And the characteristics of it are selfless. As I said, you lose sense of yourself. And again, the neuroscience of this, a lot of our logical brain happens in the frontal cortex. That's the kind of processor of our brain. And that little voice that we often hear, that voice of self-doubt, when we're speaking, when we're writing, that autocorrect that we have, when you're in the flow, that disappears, right? So you lose sense of self. Yeah, you're no longer observing yourself, which we do far too much in life. You lose sense of time. So as you mentioned, meditation, the whole principle of meditation is being in what the psychologists call the deep now. So the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist, you are just in the present. It's effortless in that somehow your muscle memory takes over, your skill takes over. But there's also this thing called richness, where you see, and it's pattern recognition. So often when we're not performing at our peak, we cannot see the connection between things. And what we can do is see associations between obvious things like cats and dogs and bread and milk. When you're in the flow, it's called bisociation, which means you see connections between completely unconnected things. And so if you're an athlete, you suddenly see a connection, like if you're climbing a rock, you suddenly see the patterns of where the handholds are, and it just flows. And for an entrepreneur, seeing connections between seemingly unconnected things is a key part of who you are. So to be able to access the flow state is such a benefit when you are an entrepreneur. And importantly, the key, what triggers you getting into a flow state is where the limit of your abilities, so if you look along the bottom axis, so you're performing at your peak, yeah? But where the limit of your abilities meets a level of challenge where you have reached a level of arousal, so not possibly sexual arousal, but not sexual arousal, but just where the challenge, you're at the limit of your comfort zone, that is where you perform in your flow. And that's why the majority of world records are broken at the Olympic Games, where the consequences, where the challenge is super high and people are pushed, like you beat your personal best every time you compete against other people. You imagine if you go out, if you're a tennis player and you're playing against somebody, you're not going to play that well, but then all of a sudden Roger Federer comes onto court. You're going to play the best game of tennis you've ever played in your life because you're in a state of flow. And so what are the triggers of, importantly, people like McKinsey, Forbes, Fast Company, they've done experiments and they use these. So one experiment to knock out that frontal cortex, so that part of the brain that is that place where all the self-awareness and the self-criticism happens, they put electrodes on the brain and knock that out of the way for just regular office workers. And so people working on computers, writing documents, writing code, whatever, they operate 5 times more efficiently with the frontal cortex knocked out because they just operate in a flow state. So that means you can come to work on a Monday and get the whole week's work done and take the rest of the week off. And importantly, so what are the triggers for flow? How do you get into that flow state? And from all the research that's been done, these are the things that get you there. And the first and most important thing is the passion and the purpose. It's something that you love fundamentally, that gives you a sense of meaning. It's how you want to be remembered in the world, but it's when you're at the edge of your comfort zone. And it's that ratio between your challenge, the challenge that you're facing, and the skills. But there's also, it's got to be, you're in a new situation. It's got to be a fairly complex situation. It's got to be unpredictable. There's got to be deep embodiment of it, where you are taking it, where you are deeply immersed in this. And where there's an automatic feedback loop, where there are clear goals and where there is this pattern recognition. Now, if that wasn't a list of criteria for what it is to be an entrepreneur, then I don't know what is. Where you're trying to operate at the edge of your abilities in an unpredictable environment, you're creating something new that hasn't happened before. And so if you can find ways, and some people do it through meditation, yeah, but if it's, and you'll see on the right, because obviously a lot of you, you're not solo founders. You're doing this as a team, you're doing it in a group. And there are ways of creating group flow. And when you watch, and depending on your allegiance to football teams, but Pep Guardiola, currently the coach of Manchester City, all the teams that he's created, and when he was coach of Barcelona, as you know, they played the most beautiful football. His whole focus was on getting his team into a state of flow, okay? So I hope that makes sense for you. So now I'm gonna move on to this concept of threat versus challenge. And again, what you all as entrepreneurs do is because you're venturing into the unknown every day, you're constantly assessing risk, yeah? So when times are difficult, you're at startup phase, you're burning through your cash, you think that your next customer is only a week away, but then it turns out that next customer is going to be a month away, and yet you're still burning cash. So what is the risk? Yeah, how do you call it quits? Yeah, do you give up? And the way I want to talk and what we're going to go through now is just some simple exercises. So is what is happening to you a threat that you can't control? Or is it a challenge that potentially you can control? Yeah. So this is really a framework of questions, and I'm going to throw it open to you shortly, where there's different ways of responding to this. And I want to show you, so this amazing woman, who I had the pleasure of doing quite a lot of work with, is a woman called Sarah Kamalo. And this is a different picture of her. She was the first African woman to climb Mount Everest. Yeah. And she only climbed it on her 4th attempt. And on her 3rd attempt, she stopped 200 meters from the summit. And her Sherpa, the guide, the local Nepalese guide, said to her, you can make it up to the summit in the next 30 minutes, but you won't make it back because the weather was coming in. There was far too great a threat and a risk to her. And as much as she, just to even get to 200 meters of the summit, was the kind of person who embraced a challenge. And like all entrepreneurs, we think we can do anything. We're invincible. It's like, bring it on. She was wise enough to recognize that the challenge had now become a threat and that the risk was too great. So she turned around and went back down the mountain. And each time you try and climb Mount Everest, it's about a $75,000 exercise. But she still turned around and went down. And a year later, having raised another $75,000, she finally summited Everest. And so balancing the threat and the challenge is always difficult. And the way you determine whether something is a threat and a challenge is it's the difference between making assumptions and assuming things versus assessing things. And like the exercise that we just went through on breathing, as the first time we did it, your body was making assumptions that you were going to die, you were going to run out of breath. Yeah. And so you react in a very visceral way, in a very physical, non-processed way. Whereas if you assess the situation in as rational a way as you can, what you then do, as I say, instead of reacting physically, you respond, okay? And this is a framework that with all the entrepreneurs that we work with in terms of how do they deal with difficult situations. if you look at any situation that's happened to you or will happen to you, obviously, you're going to get a lot of things that push you out of your comfort zone, that you perceive to be a threat to you or to your business or the future of your enterprise. And some of them, we have to say, may be a real threat, running out of cash, whatever it may be. There are some things that you can't control, but the majority of things, if you reframe them from something that scares you, that makes you feel inferior, to this is a challenge that I can now assess. So I don't make assumptions, but I assess. And instead of making kind of spontaneous reactions, I respond. Yeah. And I hope this makes sense to you, because it's allowed some of our entrepreneurs who might have given up, who might have made bad decisions in certain situations, it's allowed them to make good decisions. And ultimately, performing at your peak as an entrepreneur is the ability to make good decisions, whether it's financial decisions, product decisions, human people decisions. So just take this as a framework. So I'm going to stop the screen right now. And I just want to ask, just take a minute to think of a situation that you might have come across recently as an entrepreneur, where something, and you can also think of it as in the context that you're all operating in a state of war. And again, I'm humbled and I feel inadequate to be sharing a lot of these things because you've been through incredibly threatening and challenging situations. But think of a situation that you've been faced with recently, where initially you had that sense of threat and that you couldn't cope. But then by reframing it, thinking about it and thinking, actually, I can manage this. I can assess the situation and I can respond. Have any of you been able to apply that kind of thinking to a situation you've had recently? And as I say, it might be in your enterprise or it might be just in your life in facing the shelling of Kyiv, whatever it is that you've been going through in this horrible situation for your country. So just take 30 seconds, and then if anybody'd like to volunteer, Taras, you said yes. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I believe there were quite a few such things, and they're happening from time to time. But just it's probably easy to remember COVID-related things, and some of my my mother and father-in-law were hit really deeply by COVID. And when situation was progressing and getting bad, so first you have a fear, it's a threat, and after that you start reacting, just transforming it, what to do, couple of doctors, couple of opinions, what clinics are better, let's say, curing those states, checking them, doing some steps like starting some recommended medications. After that, some tools like oxygen, and so on and so on. And it transformed from being a fear to being a list of steps you are performing and just planning in advance. Okay, if that will not work, what's next, and so on and so on. So it's not like you're trying to guess, but at some point you're having a plan and couple of possible ways, and you are busy with doing things rather than just sitting and panicking about it and so on. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And it's a good point, and it's a fine balance between reflecting and assessing a situation and not sort of over-analyzing it to the point of paralysis, and that assessing it and then embarking on the response and trying to get into that state of flow where nothing can distract you from it. Yeah, you've chosen a path, you've got a sense of that this is the right way to go. You're deeply in the process, and that's when you'll hopefully overcome the challenge. Ivan, thank you for that. You're right. As you say, even more of these processes are hard to notice on your own without external feedback and comment. And the ability to have a significant person, whether it's your partner, business partner, your life partner, a team of people, to check you and to be a sounding board, so that feedback loop, it can be a direct personal feedback loop or a team feedback loop. Okay, is this? Oh, here we go. Ariane, what happens when you've made some bad decisions and this creates a block to making a decision in the present? The body remembers, so how do you move through that? Really good question. I wish I knew the answer, but I think the point is it is that level of assessment, and having said, in a state of flow, you're trying to get out of over self-assessment. You've got to get, and I think that's where the importance of purpose and mission come in. That actually, as long as, and I know as myself as an entrepreneur, when we started further. So we left Red Bull and started further 2 months before COVID hit. And there were times during that journey where, and we got some funding from Red Bull, but not a lot. And I was able to pay my team and run the program, but I couldn't pay myself. And so you think, have I made the right decision? Are you crazy? What kind of a risk did you do? I've got 2 kids at university. Why did you do this? What kept me going throughout the whole thing was a sense that what we do might be different. How we do it might need to be different, but why we do it will never change. And our mission has always stayed the same. So it's building stronger humans, building stronger entrepreneurs who build stronger communities. And when you wake up with that at 3 o'clock in the morning, as much as you might be panicked about cash flow and am I going to be able to pay the bills and everything else, if you've deeply embodied that sense of purpose, you'll forgive yourself for making 1 or 2 bad decisions, because that's why you're here. Yeah, that's why you're here. And that sense of, and in all the work that Red Bull did, the truly high-performing athletes, the high-performing musicians, the dancers, all of the different people they work with, what separates them from the people who come second is they have a clear focus on why they were put on this earth. And with that, can you see, oh, hang on, I stopped sharing, didn't I? Just give me a second. And sorry, I've jumped ahead a bit, but it's actually quite, because this is the quote that I wanted to share with you, which is a famous quote by Mark Twain, the American writer. There are 2 important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you find out why. And so and I discovered my why as an entrepreneur. I'd created, very cool ad agencies. I'd created a really cool youth business. But until I started on this journey of supporting people like the guy you see in the picture, who's a guy called Zakeni Ngubo, who was part of our first group of entrepreneurs in 2014, who I still coach to this day, who has just received in US dollars, $10 million investment into his education startup. And that's having walked this journey for 8 years. He also had a sense of why he does this, and why I do what I do is to help people like him do what he does. And I'm just mindful of time because I do want to allow some discussion at the end. What I want us to finish on is ask you this question: how do you want to be remembered? When was the day you found out why you do what you do? And the way we're going to do this is I want you to take 2 minutes, and I want you to imagine that this is quite a sad thing, but think forward, and you've achieved everything and more you could possibly want to have achieved. Yeah, not success, not financial success. You know, because think forward to the day when you pass away, when you die. And when you die, in most faiths, nobody at your funeral is going to read out your balance sheet. Yeah? Nobody's going to read out how much money you made. They're not going to read out how many cars you've owned, how many houses. They're going to say, what did he do? What did he or she do for the people in their lives, for society, for humanity? Yeah. What were they there for? And what I want you to do, and we won't have time to go through all of these for everybody on the call, but imagine that you've led such an impactful life. You've changed the world in such a way that a major national or international newspaper, say it's Time magazine or whatever it is in Ukraine, whether it's the Kyiv Times, whatever. Imagine there is an article written in memoriam to you. Yeah. What is the headline and what is the first 1 or 2 sentences of that article? Yeah. And this might sound quite arrogant, that you're having to think of yourself as this kind of hero who's achieved something, but that's not what it's about. It's not about ego. It's about what are you going to do for the world? Yeah. Yes, hopefully you're going to build a really amazing enterprise that can employ people, etc. But think of ultimately what your why is. What is your purpose? Because if you can identify that, you will perform way beyond what you think possible if you're not connected to that sense. So how do you want to be remembered? And I'll shut up now. So what's the headline in the magazine or the newspaper? And what's the first 1 or 2 sentences that explain what was the impact that you had on the world? Okay, if anybody, we don't have to share because this is a sort of deeply personal thing. But if anybody has written something, thought of something that they'd like to share with the group, if it would help, please just feel free. So feel free either unmute yourself or just put a hand up on the screen. But if not, we can move on to a discussion.
Taras raised his hand.
Okay.
I think he can speak.
Yeah, Taras?
Okay, so I didn't particularly write it, but in the project, my current startup and future projects I'm thinking of, I want to help. I want to be remembered for helping people be at least a bit happier in their day-by-day life, to make their relation a bit happier, I mean, psychologically or from other perspective. So something that is psychologically makes us more worried or, I mean, feeling some negative emotions here and there, and which is particularly easy to fix. I mean, by using some scientific approach, some other ideas which are widely present, but we are forgetting about them. So it's like making, but not a small group, but rather a big group of people, like the overall, I mean, a lot of people, just with using those approaches, with helping them, with making them a day-by-day part of it, making them a bit happier in their life day by day. Not a lot, let's say, at least a bit. So
no, thank you for sharing. And that's it. And that, you know, when you have those difficult situations, where you have those threatening situations, those challenging situations, if you go back to that, yeah, it's like, why am I doing this? Let's keep pushing. Hopefully that'll help you through, and where it'll turn, like we did in the breathing exercise. It will change it from being something that's very painful to just a sensation that I can manage, because I have a higher mission of doing this. I see Roman's got his hand up. Just to quickly comment on Ivan's thing, and that's a really good question. I'm going to be quite provocative in my reply to that, Ivan, because often a lot of people see purpose or doing good in that sense. So Ivan's question was, what happens when someone wants to first gain financial independence, not having to work ever again, before thinking about purpose? And that's typically the way philanthropy works. It's usually people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett make all these billions of dollars and then give it away. Yeah, it's called giving back. Now, my view is, if you've got to give something back, you shouldn't have taken it in the first place. And that actually, in today's world, and it's something we say, as I say, we work a lot with social entrepreneurs who are trying to do good in the very enterprises that they run, that if you just chase the money, the chances are you will fail. If you chase the doing good and having a true impact, chances are you might end up being financially independent. Yeah, if it's just the money that's driving you, yes, you could do it, and absolutely there's nothing wrong with that. But people will believe in you, and as early stage and as people who invest in early stage businesses, those investors are going to invest in you if there's a bigger mission in what you're doing, not that you just got to show them a return. And so there's increasingly in the world, and there's been a big shift in the world where people now talk about impact investment and everything else. But it's far easier to access investment and far easier to access finance, any form of funding, if there is a social or environmental benefit to the business that you are doing. Far more people will be, you're opening the book far wider to a far wider number of people. So don't think of purpose as something you can put off until you've made your money. Think of purpose as a way to make the money in the first place. Okay, I don't know if that helps. Roman.
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
So this is kind of weird, but it struck me when I thought about this question. So the headline goes like this: the famous comedian Roman Murdziuk left a note when he died. Take some rest. a man who made millions of people laugh, make them smile. So yeah, that's it. I guess I'm going to be comedian right now.
Thank you. Anastasia's put a big heart up on the screen. I don't know if you can see it on your phone.
I don't.
And Sasha. Okay. Anybody else like to share? And yeah, so Taras, I don't know if you saw Yaroslav's comment in the thing. So just based on you saying you want to make people a little bit happier, how can I get the product you're offering? Take my money, please.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. That's the way it works. That's what I was saying. You know, do good and people will buy your product and service. If they just see that you're out to make the money, you might make money. Yeah. So I think maybe if I can throw it out to you, I mean, does what we've been going through here, you know, there's no magic recipe, but it's all rooted in you know, realizing that you're capable of far more than you think you are, putting a framework to doing that by assessing the situations that come up and making the good decisions. Yeah. And if I just jump back to, sorry. This, which is the framework that I mentioned as a sort of checkpoint, and I'll share the deck with you all afterwards. Incidentally, I jumped over story. The thing about story, and that's the subject, as Alfie mentioned, I'm doing another session, I think in October, all on the power of storytelling, because that's another thing that, as you know, Red Bull are very good at, and I've managed, I think, to be able to share a lot of that wisdom. That storytelling isn't just about marketing and communications, it's strategy, yeah? And building your narrative, particularly as an early stage startup. If you write down your story as to what your story is going to be into the future, story equals strategy, and that's why it's so important. But if you look at all of those other things around it, if you take this as a checklist, yeah, so starting at the top, you know, am I clear on what my purpose is? Do I look after my well-being, my physical, mental, emotional well-being? Do I invest in developing my technical skills? Are my communication tools as a business right? All the way around, if you look at these and think, right, how am I doing in this, and rate yourself on it, then this is your high performance plan, yeah? And you obviously can't work on all of the cogs all of the time, and often you've got to prioritize, and often you've got to start with the personal well-being, because as Ariane said, without your health, then none of the rest of it works. But if you see this as your template for high performance as an entrepreneur, then you won't go too far wrong. Okay. So what do you think? Tell me. I mean, does this make sense? Do you feel now that you've got a little bit of a toolkit to be able to perform a little bit better, a little bit stronger, put up with bigger challenges, and get through what you need to get through? Okay, a couple of hearts popping up. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Or comments, observations from your own experience of, I'd love to hear, you know, what you guys do to push yourselves to perform at a higher level. What's your secret sauce? I think a couple of people mentioned meditation, you know, sport, exercise. Often exercise is, you know, that endorphin rush, that's the most important chemical rush we can get. But what are your secret tricks?
Fast.
Max?
Yeah.
So something what helps me a lot, I found it's two things. So I'm not sure what is in English, but how you call it in English. So it's tool that you use to hurry up horse, you know, and how you call it?
I suppose a whip. I don't know. What would it be?
Whip,
A kind of
whip.
Yeah.
Whip it and something like cookie. So it's two tools. Whip is thing that you don't want. And when I set goals, I set this whip. If I don't reach this goal, I will have this punishment with a whip. And if I will reach this goal, I will have some benefit as a cookie or whatever, something like carrot, you know, that for horse, something that inspired me and makes me go more and achieve this goal. So it's two things that helps me to do more when I'm down and when I'm up. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. A couple of questions in the chat. So I wanted to ask, what does the X factor in the Red Bull High Performance Map mean? Good question. So the X factor, it's a kind of saying in English, which means that undefinable thing, that sort of magical thing that you can't quite put your finger on. And you know, in sort of show business, in movie stars, musicians, it's people who have that unpredictable, that aspect that you can't quite define them, that makes them highly successful. So it literally means you can't define it. That's why it's the X factor. And what, in the context of a development framework, it's how do you, because you've got to remember, in the world of Red Bull, even an athlete, you're in the world of content and show business. So what makes people watch millions of views of one surfer versus another surfer who's just as good a surfer, but they just don't quite have that charisma, that X factor, that sort of mystery. And that's what creates a sort of successful one versus an unsuccessful one. Yaroslav, thanks for sharing. My mind is buzzing with insights. A question I'm intentionally provocative. How do I build purpose-led business in a way that does not end up like a Kendall Jenner solving racism with a can of Pepsi? I think it's all about authentic. I mean, it's a silly, I think you know the answer to this, Yaroslav, because it's about authenticity and a deep understanding and insight as to what exactly the problem is, and a sensitivity for the people who you're trying to help. And we, you know, and I particularly am a big believer that too much of the doing good in the world is done by people like the Kendall Jenner, where it's a sort of savior syndrome, where they want to go and save someone else, and they want to be seen to be this person saving other people, where the most effective transformation, the most effective social impact happens by the people closest to the problem being enabled to be the closest to the solution. Yeah. And so it's about having human dignity and respect for the people that you're working with, and not treating them like idiots to be given stuff for free, because all you do then is create dependency. So it's about having an authentic connection to the problem you're trying to solve, to engaging with those people, to not diminish their dignity, to not diminish their self-respect, to not treat them like beneficiaries who just have their hands open, but to treat them like human beings who are equally as worthy as you are.
There are also some questions in the chat, so I can read them, or you can do that.
Please,
Yeah, sure. So after that, it was about X factor. So Anastasia asked, X factor is kind of charisma?
Yep. Exactly.
Okay.
That's what it is.
So, and one more question from Ivan. So there are 15 parts in the mechanism, and all of them looks very reasonable. how to find focus and how to balance discipline with giving yourself freedom to go with the flow, following passion and purpose.
Wow, Ivan, I think your business, I don't know what your business is, but your business should be something to do with asking difficult questions because you're really good at it. Yeah, look, as I said, you can't, I think I said when you speak, when you look at those cogs, you can't work on all 15 at once, but you've got to be in a constant feedback loop and you've got to be thinking, right, before I can work on that, I need to work on this. And as I say, often you need to start with the human cogs, the personal cogs first, before you work on some of the other ones, because you're the engine of the business. So unless the engine is working properly. So you always got to, and what we do, and Alfie helped us write the playbook on this. If you look at, say you're working on over an 18-month period, at any given time, if you break that down into 3-month cycles, so you've got 6 phases. And if you, from that set of cogs, if you pick maybe 3 cogs for the first 3 months, and it might be my own physical well-being, it might be my sense of purpose, but it might also be the product and service that I need. So I spend all my time working on those. I don't spend my time recruiting staff. I don't worry too much about the financial model. I don't worry about the marketing and communications. I just focus on those. Then at the end of those 3 months, you go, okay, we're there now. What are the next priorities? Is the priority now working out what organization I need to build? Do I need to be clear on my financial model yet? Or am I just going to keep trying things and see how it goes? And so the financial model can wait till next quarter. Yeah. So you don't, as an entrepreneur, you can't do everything all the time. So you've just got to, and the danger is your other point, Ivan, about do you give yourself the freedom to go with the flow? Often entrepreneurs are kind of passionate inventors of things, and they would much rather spend their life developing the product and tinkering with the product and standing up all night, because that's their passion. That's how they got to this thing. But often you need somebody to check you on your shoulder and say, well, look, the product is good enough now that you need to start building a team, and you need to find somebody to run finance for you, and you need to think about marketing. And we've worked with lots of entrepreneurs where they just like having their hands dirty in the product because they're engineers or something. And you've constantly got to pull them out and say, you're not an engineer anymore. You're a leader of a business, and people need you to focus on different things. So you can't always go with the flow. That's not contradictory to everything I've been saying. Yeah, I think is the question from Andrew, is there any way to understand what part of all the cogwheel you should prioritize right now? That's what I would do is take that cogwheel and mark yourself kind of out of 10. Where are you on all of those things? And then you have to say, right, well, if I want to get that one from a 5 to a 9, is there anything else on this wheel that I need to do first to enable me to do that? So it's self-prioritizing, and each one is different. Some of you will start with a great idea and you've already got the marketing campaign and a brilliant website, but you still don't quite know what the product's going to look like or what the financial model is. So only you can work out the order in which you do these things. What are the
there was also a question from Ariane. She asked, where is the balance with being a doer and trusting life bigger force going on? And she also said, I guess the more spiritual parts of the Coke, how did Andy Wells teach people this part?
Yeah, I think to answer the first one, the spiritual part is more this, because if you notice on the Red Bull cogs, there isn't one dedicated to purpose and kind of how do you want to be remembered. The spiritual thing is what is that greater meaning for you? And for some people it is, a lot of athletes, very religious athletes, driven, they have a sense of formal spirituality. But for a lot of people, spirituality is just, what is the universe? What is my contribution to the universe? What do I want to give out into the world? So it's that sense of how do I want to be remembered? So I guess it's a bit of a proxy for that. And the balance between being the doer and trusting life bigger force going on. Yeah, look, I know you and I share the same thing. It's an exchange of energy. You put good energy out into the universe, you get good energy back, like you said. And it was interesting. You were talking about the rush you get from doing things for other people, and that's also a chemically defined drug. It's called oxytocin, which is the love drug, the empathy drug. And when we're doing the session on storytelling in, I think, a month's time, I talk a lot about oxytocin because good storytelling heightens people's levels of oxytocin and makes people want to collaborate with you more. And it's been scientifically proven. And so oxytocin is the drug that makes you want to hug people. It's the hormone that makes you fall in love with people, that makes you cry in movies. And good storytelling triggers higher levels of oxytocin. And for people like investors, it makes them want to invest in you. So there's a very practical reason to it as well. So again, doing good stuff, putting good energy out into the universe. I don't know if that answers your question.
I can see Ariane. Maybe maybe the order just changed, or she's not here. But I think, yeah, that's ultimate.
Okay.
Also, there was a question from Alexander, how coaches can help pass their hard decisions and challenges. And the second question from him was, how do you choose the coach has taken in account your own experience? And what's the main point that you prefer to pay attention to?
Really good questions. And I think given this whole program of coaches for Ukraine, coaches aren't there to provide the answers. Coaches are there to help you answer the right questions. So what a good coach should do is firstly help you find what are the questions you need to be answering and enable you to answer the questions yourself. And that's often the difference between a coach and a mentor. Often a mentor is somebody who has walked the journey and they say, well, when I was in your position, I did this. That's not a coach. Yeah. The coach is there to help you get the best out of yourself. So therefore, what the coach will help you do is they'll look at that wheel of cogs and say, okay, honestly, how do you think you're doing here? What do you and why do you say that? Why does that, why do you think you're not doing, or why do you think your business model doesn't need any work? Yeah. And it's so, and the coaches that we've always worked with, and the reason why Ariane has been an amazing coach to some of our entrepreneurs, as Alfie, I think Mark Herson, I don't know if Mark's spoken, they are all highly gifted and highly experienced business people. But more than anything, they are hugely empathetic understanders of the human condition, and that you might be a genius technical entrepreneur, but if the human side, the balance side of self isn't being looked after and coached, then you're not, arguably you've got to be open to coaching in the first place. And that's one of the first assessments we do with entrepreneurs. It's like, are you open to having difficult questions asked? Yeah. So I think the important thing, and sometimes you look for coaches with a knowledge of your sector or of your industry. But again, to me, that's a sector, that's a mentor who understands it, who can give you advice. But often the best coaches know nothing about your business sector and ask stupid, naive questions that make you think differently about what you're doing. So I think it's got to be somebody who ultimately gets you as a human being and a person first, and only secondly, the business. Fine. Sasha, how are we doing for time? Do we need to wrap up?
I mean, we have like 5 or 10 more minutes for questions, if you have any. So guys, please drop your questions to the chat if you have any, or just send us the reactions or thank you messages, or you can unmute yourself and say whatever you want to say. So go for it.
Okay, I think the question Andrew asked, what are the typical cogwheels that entrepreneurs usually miss more than others? Easy. Well-being, personal well-being. Yeah, that it's like, I don't have time to go to gym. I don't have time to have conversations about my mental health. I must push through. We have this sort of macho, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, I can do this kind of mentality. So definitely that. And definitely the building a team, because entrepreneurs by definition tend to be control freaks, and they spend the first few months or years trying to do everything. So they are, they're the product designer, they're the marketing department, they're the sales department, they manage the finances, and they're really bad at trusting people, and they're really bad at employing people who are better than they are in those disciplines because they feel threatened by it. And so they are often, entrepreneurs are really bad at management and empowering other people. Big, huge generalization, but I honestly think that's the one we struggle with the most, where entrepreneurs, why they've got where they are to whatever stage on the journey they are, is because they're supremely self-confident and they think they know everything. But there's a great book by, I think it's Marshall somebody or other, called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Yeah? And that's why, particularly as a founding team, you know, there are going to be some phases of the business. If there's a team of you, there are going to be some people who step up at some phase, you know, and I know myself, I've always been a great creator and builder of a business. I'm a crap manager of a business. Yeah. So whilst it's still on the really steep accelerating thing, that's where I'm good. When it starts flattening out and you've got to start building systems and scaling and this and that, count me out. I'll be at the back of the room at that stage. So it's getting people to understand what they're good at and having the confidence and the trust to bring in people better than they are in other things to be able to make it work. I see a few nodding heads and smiles there, so I'm figuring you recognize that a bit. Okay, Evgeny and Oleg, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I think if there's no other big questions, thank you for your time, and I hope this has been useful. Again, in these things where you're talking in very abstract concepts, even if you just found 2 or 3 thoughts that you wrote down that you can apply tomorrow in the way you manage yourself or the way you think about the business, then that'd be great. And Everest, you need to go to sleep. Hey, it's past your bedtime in Kenya, because I know you're an hour ahead of here. Okay, and we'll talk about Red Bull Rampage some other time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And actually, Ian will join us in a few weeks to talk about storytelling for entrepreneurs. So there will be another session with him. And thank you guys for joining us. I was really pleased to have you here and to moderate this. So actually, I'm still here at Live 99, and you can come work here if you want. So, and actually consider doing next session here. So you can come, you can get a demo day and just spend some time here, work here, and watch it from here. So drop the message to the chat if you want. So we'll really consider this. And thank you so much. Perfect. Yeah, at least one person. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a good night. So I'll stop the recording.